All right. Today I have with me Lori, and Lori is, man, she's just taken off with her Be Awesome Network Facebook group that she's got going on. So I was able to meet her there and been on some of her live interviews and stuff she has going on. And so we got talking a little bit, and I heard a little bit about your story along the way. Not too much, but enough to just say, hey, why don't you jump on the podcast, share who you are with the rest of the people in the network, because I'm sure a lot of people might not know who Lori Phillips is. And let's just see what happens. So, Lori, would you mind just sharing with us like who you are today, what you're doing, and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you first, John, for having me. I'm used to being on the other end of this, and so it'll be interesting to be interviewed instead of interviewing. But so with that point, I started the Be Awesome Network, which is a Facebook community, just about 4 months ago, and I started it out of kind of a desire to create a space or a community for people to come to be inspired. I went through a really difficult time in my life and like many people do, and I started to feel better and focus on myself and heal and grow. And I just thought, wouldn't it be great if there could be a community that exists where people could come together and inspire one another, lift one another up, come to be inspired. And my goal is for everyone to know that they're awesome. So that's why I named it the Be Awesome Network. Because if you think about it, like how many times a day do you get told that you're awesome? And I think that if we could all kind of create that kind of energy, that we could definitely change the world.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So it's being around positive people and lifting spirits up around the people that aren't there yet. And, I know you're working on building the network even more. And I think it's around 8,000 members, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what's your plans with the network? Where do you plan on taking it?
Yeah, well, like I said, I want it to be a positive space. So I want to create, I just launched some networking events. I want to create opportunities for people to come together and meet and share ideas and maybe collaborate on new things. That would be amazing. I also would love to have like a round table or two about specific topics, just focusing, honing in on maybe like podcasting, like what you're doing, and or writing a book, or um, meditation, or positive thinking, neurology, those kind of things. Just creating good habits, time management, whatever. I mean, it's the list goes on and on and on. I just would love to kind of see some things, some relationships form, and some people come into the community and find clients for whatever it is that they do. And then clients who are wanting to learn, because I pulled the group and a lot of people are there to learn. So the people who want to learn, get them connected with mentors and people in their field, and maybe health coaches or life coaches, those kind of things. So I don't know. It's been amazing so far. And I'm just gonna keep it going and see what develops. Yeah.
Yeah. So can we dive back into your past and what kind of led you to this point where you are today?
Sure, sure. So I grew up and in an environment that was very supportive, but I was a gymnast from a very young age. And so I think I went into lessons when I was 4 years old because my parents were just like, we've got to get this kid in something because she's flipping around the house. Like I was running and jumping over the couch, doing a vault. And they're like, okay, let's actually take her somewhere she could do this safely and not break our furniture. But yeah, so I started at a very young age into this world of excellence and performance. And it was, something I loved doing. I never felt pushed to do it. My parents were always checking in on me. Hey, do you still like this? Do you still want this? Because as you progress in a sport, as you probably know, the time commitment increases, more and more. The money increase, you have to pay more, you have to travel to compete, those kind of things. So yeah, I got to the point in high school where I was 6 days a week, 4 hours a day practicing, and then competing on the weekends. So I basically didn't have a life in high school. And but it got me very far. I got a college scholarship and I competed 4 years there. And so basically, from looking back and understanding when I went through my hard time, well, I went through several periods of time that were hard as an adult, but when I look back at my life and what I learned as a normal behavior, which was to push myself, like push myself really hard, push through the pain, compete with a sprained ankle, just tape it up and grit your teeth. And so I kind of conditioned myself to do that whenever a problem came or a challenge. My body just kind of learned to just go, 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 and until it wouldn't go anymore. So there was 2 years ago, well, in the summertime, uh, I was in a phase of my life where things were really hard. My marriage was failing. There was just a lot of relational things going on in my life. Work was really stressful, and I just kind of pushed through it. And I mean, if I'm honest, kind of put a smile on my face and didn't really. I was going to counseling and things, but I was just pretending like everything was okay. Um, and it wasn't. So my body just gave up. And I remember driving home that day. Well, I actually don't remember driving home that day. I remember get the end of the workday, getting in my car. I was in tears. It was just a really hard day and nothing like basically backing up about 2 weeks before that, my brain started misfiring. So it was like losing things and slurring my speech sometimes. Also like not able to find things on my computer. So my job, like I was not doing my job well and I knew it, but I didn't know it was happening. So what I call it is a crash. Some people might call it a nervous breakdown or uh your nervous system just misfires. And so I spent the next year recovering. I never went back to work. They called me like a few like over the weekend. I just kind of hung out in my room and I couldn't really it was a really, really difficult time. So I remember not being able to um walk sometimes. I wasn't able to like I said, form sentences. Like I was very sensitive to light and sound, and I just was like curled up in a ball in my bed. My mom came over, she fixed me meals, and yeah, so it was a humbling time because I was used to being a high performer, and I couldn't even do the basics, and so it was a very scary time, and so just finding that place in myself where I had to kind of look within and realize what I was doing to myself. So it was a long process of coming back out of that, but finally I started feeling better and feeling more like myself. And but after, a good 3 or 4 months of being at home alone, um, I started to kind of slowly like, okay, I think I might drive somewhere. I think I might, I started to exercise. I was doing yoga, just getting my system back to normal, I guess. And so out of that journey and the anxiety that I was facing and the body pains, the challenges, just coming, I thought I had damaged myself for good. And then coming out of that and getting to a place where I was actually feeling good, taking care of myself, um, starting to prioritize myself for the first time in my life. Like, what does Lori want? Because I raised 3 kids and did the whole mom thing for so long. yeah, it just out of that recovery came a desire to kind of, I guess, maybe share my story, but I'm not there yet. I'm just coming on things like this and sharing my story. I want to maybe write a book, but mainly out of the desire to kind of help others and create a community where people can, share their struggles and share their victories on the other side of their struggles. That's kind of why I started the Be Awesome Network. I knew I had a voice and a story, and I knew if I could do it, then I could encourage others to do it. And then also, I just feel like everyone has a story. Everyone's story is important. And yeah, so I wanted to just create a platform that we could all come together and encourage one another. So
That's great. And just so I understand correctly, was it like your mental state that kind of caused your body to shut down? Okay.
yeah, I never experienced anything like it before. Like I said, things were slipping in my mind, and it wasn't a depression. It was more anxiety. So, when your body, I basically kind of, as I learned more and more about it, my body was in fight or flight. And I think I had lived there for a very long time because I went through about a decade of my first husband had an affair. He was uh, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and that just kind of put my body on edge. And then, there was a process of a lot of different things in our family that happened over that span of time. I got remarried like a dum dum out of out of my trauma. I was like, I gotta find someone to be here for me. So I got married, and then that marriage ended. So it was like 10 years of just pretty crazy times. And my body was in fight or flight that whole time. So I was hyper vigilant. Everything was urgent, and so my body just gave out.
Yeah. I'll be first to say you weren't dumb. You just had to go through that too as well. Then you found out everything on the other side of it. So, um, yeah, we all have to experience things, you know.
Yeah.
I got in that point too for myself. I had to figure out stuff on my end, going through a divorce and everything, but as a guy, right? So it's totally different, maybe it's totally different. I don't really know. Everything I hear, from the woman's side, it depends. I guess it depends on who pushes what. But I'm glad you shared that. So like, what did you try to do to change things? Like, what did you work through mentally to, what was your routine, your practices to get you back up on your feet again?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was so far on the other side of the spectrum. I was very disoriented. So I had to, every day I woke up, I started keeping a journal of like what my day was kind of was what it was like. And it wasn't like I was writing out thoughts or feelings or emotions. It was more like I was so confused. I didn't remember if I had eaten. I was losing weight. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna write down every time I eat. My handwriting looked like a 4-year-old trying to learn how to write. It was very shaky. Sometimes I would transpose numbers. So I would write down my weight and I'd be like, no, that can't be right. It was just so I started at the very basics. I felt like I had gone back to elementary school and had to relearn a lot of things. Um, I, like I said, was so confused that I even deleted everything off my phone because everything was overwhelming me. So I had like 10,000 pictures and I just deleted everything. And luckily, Apple gives you 30 days to recover those things because I was like, talking to friends and they're like, wait a minute, you're going to lose everything if you do that because if you delete it from your phone, it deletes from the cloud. And I'm like, what? So, yeah, so I had to start at the very basics. So I started just by taking care of my basic needs. My energy was very low. So, um, I didn't cook or, do those kind of things. I had people coming over, like basically taking shifts, my friends and my family taking shifts, cooking for me, making sure I ate, I look back and I'm just like, in my mind at that time, I thought maybe I was going to have 24-hour care for the rest of my life because I knew of people that had crashed in similar ways and never did recover because your nervous system really does control everything in your body, and you can basically uh, pick up autoimmune diseases and disorders and things like that uh, that I thought maybe, anyway. So just covering the basics every single day, slowly and surely getting better. I also played worship music, positive music 24/7. I created this playlist that I called Comfort Worship, and it was just songs about how God loves me and he's there for me. And then after my body started to kind of get back online, I started doing yoga, and I would do yoga to that music. So it was kind of like this. When I look back at that period of time, it was a really hard season because I did have to relearn a lot of things, and went to therapy. I went to a trauma a trauma recovery workshop that was an intensive for a whole week. Um, so I did a lot of things to help myself, but when I look back at that period of time, it's one of those very difficult seasons, but it was also like one of the times I felt closest to God because it was like God was all I had, you know? And so there's some really sweet things that happened in the way that I started praying and hearing and learning and growing. And so it was a very hard time, but at the same time, it was a very amazing time. Yeah. So that was the beginning. And then just slowly but surely, I started kind of starting to breathe and feel a little more calm. I had medication, of course, I was taking, which I'm now thankfully off. But yeah, so it was a long, hard road, but I was very fortunate that I had people in my life who could come alongside me and help me do what I needed to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that is amazing, and I think, a lot of us now, we put those thoughts in our head where we have these physical problems, and they, like you said, they become reality then when it never was there, and the people get stuck. So thankfully you didn't get there, and you sounds like you had a great supportive team to help you along the way. And sometimes we don't know that the supportive team is there until things happen, right? They show up out of the blue and you're like, oh, I didn't even know they really cared in a way. Um, and then I just I wanted to go back on a question of your faith. I mean, was that something you always had prior to this?
Yeah. Yeah, I was very sensitive. I'm a very highly sensitive person. I guess that's a label now that people are learning about as a HSP, highly sensitive person. So my intuition and my ability to connect with people and God is heightened. So as a kid, I just remember always feeling like, well, I was born into a family that was, a Christian family. So we went to church. I learned very early about God and the fact that I know that I learned was that he created us all uniquely, and there was the opportunity to have a relationship with God. That he wasn't just this big entity in the sky that's just looking down on us, that he actually wants to commune with us. And I experienced that very early as a kid. In fact, I told my dad once when he came to tuck me in at night, he sat down on my bed and I was like, no, 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 get off, get off, get off, get off the bed. You're sitting on Jesus. He's spending the night. So it was like I had this kind of sweet relationship, just a knowing that he's there for me. And I'm using the labels of Christianity in my terminology, but it was just a very personal thing for me. And so I've always had that in my life. I've always at hard times in my life, I've always turned to God and received that comfort. So for me to do that 2 years ago was just a natural reaction that I had practiced over a lifetime. Yeah. So yeah, that's been a sweet thing in my life that I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, and so now you're carrying out this network and you're doing all this other stuff. I know you still have a full-time job and everything, which it's a lot, and I'm still doing stuff too with a full-time job. But do you find that what you're doing now is your purpose to like for God?
Yeah, I definitely felt like there was a calling for me to do something like this. I've always felt like I've always supported other people's missions. Like I've always gone to work for people who have, I worked for a church for almost 20 years. I did work for myself, but I love supporting people. And so I've always kind of been that cheerleader, that behind the scenes person that, okay, I'll figure it out, we'll make this happen. And I'm still doing that in my full-time job today. But I just knew there was like more in me that I was actually could be a leader. I do have a purpose. I can be the person deciding things. And then I can support myself, and then other people can come alongside me and they can do this thing, whatever it was, together. And it just kind of morphed into the Be Awesome Network. And so I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I was led to do it. And that's where I give the credit to God, because it's like I couldn't have done this without listening to what I felt like he was leading me to do. And then also just the results, the growth is just happening so fast. And it's not because of because I know it all and I know how to do this. It's really I feel like there's an energy that he's helping me create, this positive environment, and this, I guess you could say, this encouragement to other people that whatever it is in your life you're wanting to do, you can do it and we can do it together. So let's, join hands, let's run fast, let's get there together, right? So yeah, it's definitely a calling that I felt it was time for me to do. Yeah.
It's cool. There's another group I'm part of, and we have the term servant leader. So that would be exactly everything you just explained. You're helping others, you're serving first, not looking for anything in return. And eventually things are going to come back to you, but you're not even looking for it. Right. So, I mean, what you're doing is amazing. You do have a large following to start with. And I know you said it's like fast, but it was probably a slow process in the beginning. And you're like, I'm sure you had mixed emotions in the beginning. Is this for me? And, should I be doing this? Eventually things change in time, and, you'll find new little paths to, go down wherever this network goes. And after that, who knows? But that's the part of the journey, right? We don't really know exactly where it's going. I'm doing stuff I never even thought I would be doing. So it's just amazing. Do you have anything else that you would like to add before I ask you the last question?
I'm like, well, what's the last question?
Can't tell you. So
Oh, I would just add that well, thank you, John, for doing what you're doing and following your calling, and creating a space for people to tell their stories. And it's a beautiful thing when we can support one another and learn more about one another, and encourage one another, right? So thank you for having me. And then I guess for anyone listening who has something inside of them that they know they want to or need to do, even if it's not defined yet, I would just encourage you to keep uh keep seeking the answers and keep pushing yourself towards that goal. So like sometimes people are like, I really want to write a book, and they just put it on the shelf and they just don't do it. Or I want to start a podcast, right? Like what you did. Um, or, I really want to be my own boss. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to start my own business. I want to be a life coach. I want to, people that know they can make a difference, but they're not there yet. I would just encourage anyone that is feeling that way to take that first step, because I am just amazed at what happened after I took that first step, right? So taking the first step to start the network, going out on the road and traveling and leaving home and just being a mobile digital nomad, right? Like this is a whole different way of living for me. And I have just been amazed at the growth that I've experienced and then the opportunities that have come my way. So I would just encourage anyone who's listening to do that one thing that you want to do, but you haven't done yet.
That's great. Yeah, take that first lead, right? And everything can open up. You have to go through the pain to get to the success on the other side. How before I ask you that one question, how can somebody connect with you or your Facebook group, and what's the best way?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's the Be Awesome Network on Facebook. So you just look up, well, it's actually, I changed it to Be Awesome. So just BE Awesome. Just search that up on Facebook, and it's a bright, fun page, purple, pink, black. It's got a lot of energy to it. So if you've found a group that looks like that, that's where you can land. And yeah, then it's Lori Phillips on Facebook, and that's the best way to reach.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll put that in the show notes and stuff. So my last question is, what are the three key things you learned and used along your journey?
Three key things. Okay. Um, well, I would say the first thing I learned along my journey was that I'm not alone, and really none of us are alone. So that was asking for help, reaching out. Sometimes it's hard, but it's a necessary step in any kind of healing journey, because no one can really do this on our own. Like, I don't know of anyone who is just out there by themselves crushing it, right? Everyone has someone in their corner. And yeah, so that was probably my lesson, my first lesson. My second lesson was to learn to love myself. And I just really hadn't done that for a long time. I hadn't taken care of myself, and I didn't realize that I was, you know, focusing so much on other people and their lives, and serving. That's really good at serving, but I had not served myself. So you're not alone. Love yourself. And then I think the third lesson I've learned through my journey is that I'm much stronger and more capable than I ever thought I was. So yeah, I just looking back and seeing where I came from and where I am now, just super proud of myself in a lot of different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you came a long way, and who knows where it's going to go from here. I'm sure there's stuff you can't even think of. They're all great key things that you learned and used. And Lori, I thank you for coming on and sharing your journey, and to the listeners, the people that watch this. So thanks.
Thanks for having me.